You're right. You can't see what I'm doing. That is true. You're just looking at the live screen, aren't you? Haha! Hey. I'm a dummy. First live stream. There you go. I'm a noob. Okay, cool. Let me pull that back up now. Okay, you guys can see now, right? Thanks. Thank you very much. Okay, let's start over then. First live stream, okay. So we've got a plane. We've created a plane here. Okay, cool. You guys good now? Thumbs up in the chat. If you can see what I'm doing. Yes. Cool. Thanks, TV. Thanks, Hello Moon. Thank you very much. Okay, so what I was saying is we have this plane here, and there's two ways to do displacement. You can use Redshift Displacement, and you can use Cinema 4D's displacement. And we'll look at Cinema 4D's displacement first. So we've got the displacer modifier here, and we're going to put that inside the plane. Go to Shading, Shader tabs, and we're going to go to Noise. Okay, so now inside this noise, we're going to choose one that's got a little detail to it. We're going to do something like this, fire, okay? We're going to leave it like that as default. And you can see nothing's really happening right now, so we're going to... Why is something happening? There we go, because we don't have enough geometry. So you have to have geometry. So if we set this back down to 10 and 10, you'll see that there's nothing visually happening here except the whole plane is lower. And the reason that's happening is because inside of this, the only values that are showing up here are that there's enough polygons is the black. And when there's black, it's actually going to go down when it comes to the displacer inside of this Cinema 4D. So black is down, white is up, gray is going to stay exactly where it was. So we've got this black, but we can see when we start pumping in more polygons or polygon count, we start to see the detail of that. And we're like, okay, we're getting there. There we go. Cool. Honestly, I think I said that wrong. I think it's just lower. I'm pretty sure that black, I think I was right the first time. Black is actually just going to stay where it is. White is going to go all the way up. That's kind of how it's going to be. Bear with me. This is why I don't want to try live, you know. You never know. Okay, cool. So we've got that going on. But you can tell it doesn't look like this at all. So we're going to have to start adding more geometry. So we say, okay, 200. Okay, I mean, that's looking better. That's pretty cool. I like the way that's looking. We can go to this displacer and lower this down a little bit just so we can get, but you still don't have much detail. And so we would love to just hold Alt and click Add Subdivide. And that's going to add subdivision on top of the displaced geometry. So it's not going to displace that geometry. So we're going to take that out of that. Turn this off. We'll actually get rid of it. So when you add a subdivide, all you're doing is adding more segments exponentially. So the same thing would be to go in here and say 500 and 500. Okay, so now we're starting to get a little more detail, and that noise is starting to look like that. But we can go more. We need more detail. We're going to go 1,000 and 1,000. And now you're going to notice we've got nice detail. Everything looks pretty good. But holy cow, like the viewport's running very smooth. I'm glad I got a new computer because this is sluggish. So here's the thing. Maxon displacement works great. Very cool. But here's the problem with this. There's some cool things that it can do that Redshift can't do. And so here's a cool thing we can do. We can just go in here to the noise and we can just start scrolling through that. Boom, boom. And you're just going to see instantly the update. So that's pretty cool looking. Okay, we're going to leave it on this mod noise. Here's what we can do. We can say loop period 1. Animation speed 1, and we're going to go back to, and we're just going to hit play. And you're going to see the viewport is chugging. It's going pretty smooth, but what's happening here is we've got this geometry, everything just placed well, and now with an animation speed of 1 and a loop period of 1, it's going to loop perfectly. When we get to the end, it'd be easier to tell if this was going in real time. So what we're going to do is I'm going to lower this back down to like 500 and 500. That way we can see it. You'll be able to tell that it's just looping seamlessly. So there you go. That's a quick tip with some cool stuff you can do with displacers inside of Maxon without using the Redshift displacer. But you can tell when you start cranking up your geometry up to 1,000 to get these little details, your computer's going to start just chugging. And it works with any noise. If you do animation speed and loop period 1, you're going to get a seamless loop. So if you're doing like a really cool background or something for a VJ, DJ video or something, you can make some really neat stuff. But you'll see it's kind of sluggish at playback. Pretty cool though. I mean, you could render that out, and that's pretty slick. But here's the thing. So let's go ahead and add a light to our scene. We'll do an area light. Scroll out. We'll pull it back up this way, rotate it around. Does everything sound good? I think it should. I tested it, but just, I like to make sure. We'll set that back down to 10. And we're going to grab another one. We're going to hit W to move it in world space. And we're going to pull it right above. We're going to go kind of up high. And we're going to flatten it back out. Hold shift to rotate by 5-degree increments. And we're going to pull it a little forward and make this just a little bit bigger. Okay, so that's just going to be a big overhead light. Create Redshift material. Boom, slap that on there. Let's just go with a preset of like plastic. We'll make it kind of a nice light blue. Up the roughness a bit. And let's see what that looks like. We'll hit render here. Sweet. Cool. Thanks FS Visuals. Thanks Low Moon. No problem. So you can see right away, boom, we've got a pretty cool, nice looking thing here. And you can see though, when you look at it, you can really see these weird little angles and stuff. So what we can try to do is, this might break the computer. A good note is whenever you're dealing with high poly scenes and stuff, and you have your IPR render window open, you're gonna want to like pause it when you start changing things. Sometimes some things when you change, they can lag you out, and basically the program will crash. So let's go in here and let's lower the reflection all the way down. We don't want reflection, and we're just gonna go back to like sort of a gray. I hate when it does that. It gets stuck sometimes. Okay, so we'll look at this. Take a look at what that looks like. Okay. So here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna take this and we're gonna hold Alt and click subdivide. And you can see it's gonna be thinking. And it's gonna be like, oh God. And now our viewport is so full of polygons and pixels and stuff that it is gonna be kind of laggy. But honestly, S22, I gotta say, I've been doing this in R21. I just got S22 the other day. I am impressed with how well the viewport is working right now. This is really, I'm impressed. Okay, so let's render that out. See, it's taking a second. It's a lot of geometry to calculate there. Still preparing. Let's take a snapshot. This is a snapshot button, so you can take a snapshot of your previous render that you have here, your window, so you can compare stuff. So this is what it looks like now. Now that looks nice. That is nice and smooth. You can tell that took 13 seconds to render. And this one, I don't remember if it tells me how long it took to render that or not. I don't think so. So we're going to turn this off and let's render that. We'll just see what the speed difference is. 3 seconds. Okay, so adding that subdivide added on 10 seconds to a render, which is still really fast with Redshift. I mean, obviously this is a very simple scene. A few lights and a very basic material. But for that amount of geometry, it's pretty good. Okay, so now let's take a look at the difference with Redshift makes. So we'll hide this, hide that, boom, boom, boom. We've got our new plane here, 10 by 10, no problem. We're gonna leave it at 10 by 10 for now. We're gonna create Redshift material, and then accidentally misclick Redshift material. We're gonna double click this, say, so here's how we use Redshift Displacement. So say we wanted to use the exact same thing. So we go in here, we type in noise, and here we are with Maxon noise. And if you don't have a version of Redshift that supports Maxon noise, they introduced it at 3.0. And I'll show you. We're gonna plug this into the diffuse color. Actually, no, we're not. We're just gonna. So if you don't have Maxon noise, let me say this real quick. Uses fit and IPR so smooth. Yeah. Oh, I use fit windows and IPR so smooth. Yeah. If you don't have Maxon noise because you have something before 3.0, what you can do is you can use a C4D shader and then use a texture map. If you go to your C4D shader and you go to shader noise, you now have the exact same controls that I just did. This is exactly the same as what I did. And this is the same thing that Maxon noise uses. You can take that, plug that into the input, the text 0, and there you go. So basically, this is exactly the same. So now if you need to change your noise and stuff, you can do it within this shader and plug it in if you don't have Maxon noise. The only difference is you're now adding a step where basically the way it's calculating that is it's going to create this shader, bake it down into a texture, then use that texture, which if you're only using it a few times, you're not going to see any issues. But if you have like a bunch of materials in your scene that are doing this, you will start seeing it slow down your scene. But that's how you can use it if you don't have 3.0. But 3.0 I do have. So here we go. We're going to plug this straight into the surface. And this is kind of a thing I like to do. I'm going to open up my RPR window. If you just, scroll wheel to zoom in and out of this, Alt and middle mouse click to move this around. If you ever accidentally get lost, hit F, and that frames it perfectly. So if you're doom, hit F, it fits the window like a boss. So there we go. Hide that. F. Okay, the F key will fit that perfectly. So what we do when we tie this in straight into the surface is once we apply this to our plane, this will allow us to see it here. Now I like to do this rather than, there are some, there are some advantages to using Maxon shaders and stuff versus Redshift, and that's the fact that you can see everything in the viewport live. But honestly, Redshift's so fast, I like to pop up my little Redshift window here and instantly it's just this fast. So now I can see in the surface, we can see what this noise is actually going to look like on our object. And so here we go. We've got our scale here. Let's go to, what do we do? Fire? We did fire for that, right? Fire is not an option. It is. There it is. It's just hidden down there. Cool, cool. So now let's increase the scale. No, we'll just leave it. Okay, so this is what our noise is going to be applied. So here we go. Displacement. Type in displace over here. We've got two things here. We've got displacement and displace blender without the R. There it is. Displacement. So we're going to grab a displacement. And the blender is when you want to combine textures to displace. So the bump map is kind of the same thing. The way it works is if you have two textures or two noises you want to displace, you're going to need to connect them. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to connect this into texture text map. Okay, and that's how this is going to work. And it's going to work as a height field because we are using white and black values. So like I mentioned earlier, black is no change, white is elevation. Now if we switch this scale to -1, now black is no change, white is going down. So that's the difference there. So if we leave it at 1, we'll be okay. Now there are other options. Vector. Now vectors are insane and I do not understand how they work. But basically if you get a height vector map, like there's a few free examples. There's one of like an ear, a human ear, and you put that in the displacement. Somehow, basically what it does right now is where it's white, it's going to raise those polygons up. But a vector map has all kinds of colors and it can actually create contours. So like it makes an ear where the middle is lifted up and then it goes out above the plane and just kind of creates, it's weird. It's bizarre. We're not going to go over vectors. That's a whole nother tutorial and they are wild and I do not understand how they work, but they are really cool. Okay, so displacement. So here's, before I talk about displacement blender, here's how displacement works. Is we take this And if you try to plug it into your material, you're going to realize there's nowhere for it to go. And you think, well, maybe I've shoved it in the bump map. You don't, okay? It doesn't go into your material. It goes into your output. So you grab this output, plug it in here, right there. That's where displacement is. Boom. And you can see nothing changes. Nothing happens in our scene at all. That's because we have to add a Redshift object tag. ZBrush, is that how they do it? Oof. ZBrush is amazing. And now with Unreal Engine 5 being the way it is, with people are going to make the amazing models, and they're not going to have to optimize it near as much, and all the detail. Oh, it's going to be awesome. Anywho, that's a whole nother thing. Basically, what we have going on here is we've got Maxon noise, plugging into displacement, and we're good. But if we wanted to use a displacement blender, if we have another material, we can't just grab this. We grab the displacement and we plug it in. We make that the base layer, okay? We can't just grab something and plug it into the second layer to mix it. It's not going to work. You have to have another displacement node. So it has to funnel into that as well. Then you can grab that and plug that in to an input. Grab this, bring this down, and now we're combining two things. So if we were to change the noise, we would be combining those two things, because inside of this you have the blend weight. And basically if you set that to 1, you're going to say use this 100% and use this 0%. But if you say add this to 1 and add additive, then it's saying use this 100%, use this 100% on top of it. So basically it's like setting it to screen or add in Photoshop or something like that. So you can make some really nice displacement things. You can have a couple basic scratch maps, you can have big concrete maps, you can have big overall dents, and you can mix them all together. Really cool, all inside of this. Instead of having one map that has all these details where they get muddled up, you can start controlling them and fine-tuning them individually. And on top of that, you actually have the option, if you notice here, you can say displacement weight. So that you can just grab a map, plug that into the weight, and what that's going to do is that's going to act as like an alpha layer, where anywhere that it's white, it's going to say, okay, where it has a white value, that is going to apply the input. Okay, so this is layer 0, okay? And this is the base. If we have a weight map going into layer 0, wherever it's white, it's going to apply this. It's going to apply this texture, but where it's black, it's not going to. So it's going to be solely this. It's not going to add this on top of that. It's just going to work like that. So it's like an alpha map. Okay, little side tangent there. Back to the simple quick tip of displacement. Got that plugged in, nothing's happening. So we're going to just plug this back into our surface so we see our material here. We're just going to leave it at the default gray, close that. You'll notice nothing is happening. So here's what you got to do. You got to right click your object that you want to put this displacement onto. You go to Redshift Tags, Redshift Object. Still nothing happening. That's fine. Go over to the Geometry tab. Click Override. Then go down here to Displacement. Click that. Now, I know that's a lot of steps, but it's actually very quick. And you'll see instantly in our scene here, if you scroll in, we have displacement. And that looks pretty good because we only have 10 polygons in there, 10 segments, so we already got way more detail. But the reason we have detail, don't let this fool you. These will be saved, yeah. I will post these live on my channel afterwards. Good question, thanks FSS. It's hard to say. This isn't actually displaced right now. This is a bump map, I believe. So here's how you test. Crank that scale up. Oh, yeah, it's displacing it. But it also is implying the auto bump. So we're going to turn that off. Yeah. So it's just a fake bump map. So that's one thing to notice. The cool thing that Redshift object tags have is this enable auto bump mapping. So basically that's going to apply your displacement as a bump map on top to kind of smooth out everything and kind of cheat the calculations a little bit like a bump map does. So what we want to do is actually, we want to up this to say 10. Okay, and we'll see that that's going on. We're going to turn off the auto bump mapping just so we can see what's actually being displaced. And right now you'll see there's not much being displaced because we don't have a lot of geometry going on. So what we're going to do is we're going to add 50. Because what I want to do is I want to use the Redshift Tessellation instead of subdividing it. When's the next live? I don't know yet. I haven't decided. I don't have like a full schedule. I'm kind of testing it out to see how it goes. If you guys like it and stuff. I like talking to you guys though while I'm doing this. This is better than a normal tutorial. I like that. But I don't know yet. We'll see. We'll see. You guys let me know if you enjoy the live stream format. Basically, what I want to show off is how much faster this is than the other way. So here's what we do. We go in to our Redshift object tag here, and when we click this tessellation enabled, what that's going to do is that it's going to subdivide. So that when we click this tab, that's the same as subdividing, except that you don't have to actually see the geometry in your viewport. It skips the subdivision surface to render time. And by doing that, it allows it to go a lot faster. So you'll notice there's some like peaks and stuff and everything. And if you have like weird points where things aren't quite going up smoothly and stuff, what you can do is change the maximum displacement. I always like to change the maximum displacement anyway. I thought that maximum displacement would mean the amount it was displaced, and it's not. It's more the actual how detailed it's going to be. It's going to let you move things. So I like to change that to about 50. And now you can see, whoa, there's apparently a lot more detail in our noise. So if we plug that noise map back in to our surface, you can see there's definitely a lot of little details in this noise. So before we added that displacement, we took that at 1, it was just kind of raising up these as one big chunk. And it was like, okay, well those aren't black and they're kind of white, they're kind of similar. I'm just going to bring them up as one big chunk. But when you start adding, let's add 100 displacement, it's going to allow you to put little details and know those little differences between the gray and the black in there. So, boop, plug that back in. We get these details. We have the tessellation, and so the good thing is we can actually just up the subdivision like this. I'm gonna go 12, and so if I did 12 subdivisions on a subsurface scatter, that would take forever, and it would break our scene. So basically, if we did 4, which is if we try to do our plane, we had 1,000. This is at 50. We can set this to 100. So we've got 1/10 of the number of polygons here. Okay. We'll do the same thing we did here. We had a subdivision of 2 and subdivision. Okay, so we'll go at 1,000. 1,000, 1,000. Okay. We're slowing down, but we're looking good. And then we're gonna add a subdivision here, and we'll do 2. That now we're doing the same thing we did when we had that plane and we had that subdivision. We're doing exactly the same. But now we can actually subdivide even more. We can say 6, which is exponentially more detailed. And you can see it still calculates and renders way faster. If we tried to subdivide that plane 6 times inside of our viewport, I think it would break our machine. But even with that, it's 22. So what we can do is it allows you to lower your actual polygon count and do all the calculations in post. So we can get the same amount of detail, but without slowing down your scene and having a very heavy render scene. Less polygons, less everything, less smaller file size, everything is good. So that is one cool thing that Redshift has. So it has instantly, you've got your displacement turned in, you want to change it, it's going to change instantly. Beep, bop, boop, boop, boop. Now, one thing that this doesn't have, Maxon Noise doesn't have, that the other one does have, is the loop. There's no loop option, which I really want Redshift to add. Redshift, if you're listening, please add a loop option inside the RS Noise, the RS Maxon Noise, because it's not there. I can do everything else that Noise can except that. But you can still take this and offset it 50, and it's going to move it. So if we keyframe that, pull that back, move it back to 0, keyframe that, and then hit play, you're going to see it moves. And so you got this moving noise, and you can see already this kind of looks like water. Well, shoot, let's just make some water real quick, and I want to show how to do that. Really cool, real quick way to make waves. You can do water, but what that's going to do is going to make all this dispersion, which is really neat, but you don't need that. You don't need to do that at all. So what I actually like to do for water is just turn that off. And then for water and stuff, the key for a good water is a good dome map, because you got to have those reflections. So what I've done here, I'll show you my scene. I have a scene created already. And I'll swap to it. See, that's, I should stop the live stream. Okay. Here's our scene. We've got this plane, 100 segments, and we're just going to go ahead and hit F and hit preview. And we've got this ocean water, which I put sharks. I put sharks underneath it. You know, I can never like stop working on a project. I'm stupid. So it was going really smooth, and then I put a whole bunch of sharks underneath it for fun, and that was a mistake. Let's turn the sharks off. Slow everything down. Okay. So if we go to our camera here, you'll see we've got some water going on here, and we can zoom out a bit. But you can't tell what's going on here. One thing, if it gets like dark like this, I like to go to hidden lines view, just because I don't like looking at a black screen. I like to be able to see the details. So we've got this water here. And it looks really good, I think. So let me show you what this is. So there's no displacer, no nothing going on in this scene except a texture on a plane. So the way I built this, and we'll pause this so you can see. It's a little more complicated, but it's a little overdone, to be totally honest. Reorganize my stuff here, but basically it's the same. We have a displacement map. We can pull this up just so we can see. We'll plug in what's going on here. So we've got this Maxon noise. Itchy. So this is our noise map, and this is just a wavy turbulence. I thought that kind of looked like water. I've got some settings here. You know, it's pretty basic. Scale of 10. Some brightness. Didn't even really mess with it too much. And that's going into a displacement map. And our other map down here is just kind of a more ripply, softer wave. And so I plugged that in. Both these are just set to 1. And they're going into a blend mode where I just kind of added these on a little bit. So at 0.4% or 0.4 there. And so those are both going in the displacement. The displacement settings are just 6 subdivides, 50 max displacement, 20 displacement scale. Scale is going to determine how high off the ground, off the original geometry, it's going to push it. So with that, like that, I then just change the materials, and the materials are really what make this look nice. The default is actually plastic, and I changed the IOR up to like 1.5-ish. Made it a little see-through. Here, that's what the refraction is. It's like 0.1 refraction, so I could see the sharks. But the cool thing with these little white, this I think is what sells it as water. You know how the ocean kind of has those little pools of white foam that just kind of happen. And all that is another noise. I just made a noise map and plugged that into a ramp just so I could control kind of how much it added and stuff. So if I spread this out, you'll see, I think this originally was something else. Actually, I think I need to spread that out. That's messing that up. There we go. So that was adding just some dark spots. And in the reflection roughness, that was screwing it up. Okay. I kept messing with it, you know. But basically, I have this map and this map. These are both noise maps. And this one looks like this. I'll plug it in. I can't ever grab these things. So that's that. So this noise map is POXO, and I just clamped up the low clips, and so all we have are these white little bits that look like foam. And then we've got the water there, and that is going into a color layer, and that's mixing with another noise. And the color layer, they're just set to add. The color layer is just like the displacement blender, bump blender, anything. It's just a way to mix noises and texture maps together inside of Redshift, just so you can get a little more dynamic of a look here. And so this is my darker spots in the water that kind of look like just darker patches of stuff, whether it's stuff floating around or whatever. There's just nothing's ever like uniform and perfect in the world. Everything's kind of organically messy. So those are plugged into the diffuse map. So there you go. We've got displacement plugging in. We've got this for our colors here, and we've got a really nice, easy water. Looks like ocean. And it renders crazy fast. For how big this is, 4,000, with the detail that this has, I mean, that's going super fast. So one thing that's pretty cool, let's see if I still have my picture viewer open. Yeah, is when you add something, this is my first test, but you add motion blur. Yeah, that wasn't working. And boom. I mean, you got the beginning bit, that with the motion blur on there, that looks good. And these rendered at 2-3 minutes a frame. Steven, hey, thanks for joining. We're just going over making some water, some waves. This is my failed shark attempt. So there's some things to keep in mind. Here's another scene. Some cool things we can do with displacement. Let me show. Oh, okay. This is really what I wanted to show. So that's displacement in a nutshell. Any questions so far? Because we're going to go over how to make a greeble next, because they're my favorite. Yeah, it's pretty cool, isn't it? I love the lag is pretty bad. I think you guys are like 20 seconds behind. But it's pretty cool. The ocean looks really nice. One thing I tried to do forever, okay, is I tried to use a curvature map. I couldn't get it to work. So Redshift, again, another feature request I have. If you take a curvature map and plug it into this ramp here, and then we take this ramp, and we plug that into the surface. So this is really cool. Check this out. So a curvature map will actually read, I will Greeble on. The curvature map actually reads the displacement. So when you do the curvature map, even though our geometry is a flat plane, using this curvature map, we can get the displacement edges and stuff from our scene. So I thought, oh, what if I use that? You know, kind of crunch that down so that I have, let's pull it back just a bit. There, right? So that's kind of what I wanted. I was like, okay, I'm going to have these white little highlights that are actually exactly where they need to be on the geometry, and they're going to move with the displacement. And I rendered it, and I'm like, yep, that worked. That's cool. Plug that into the diffuse. Kind of a thing, just so we can see it. Hit refresh sometimes. I missed my mark there. Boom. I'm like, okay, that's really cool. This geometry is updating. I can, pull this back a little bit to get a few more. And we see those curvatures exactly where it needs to be. And that's organic, and it's going to work perfectly. And I'm like, okay, let's test to make sure it's moving with my scene, because my noise is moving, because I animated my noise with the speed here. I just set it to 1. And I'm not sure that loops. I think it does. And I offset the displacement of 1. But I'm like, okay, it's actually updating. This is going to be perfect. But when you go to render it as an animation, it stays on the first frame. The curvature doesn't update frame to frame. But if I render this out frame 1 and then frame 2 or 3, 4, 5, it would work. But if I render it out as an animation, Redshift doesn't know to change the curvature data between frames. And that drives me crazy, because it would look so cool to have these little highlights exactly where they need to be. And so instead I have to fake it with another texture map. So Redshift, get on that. Thank you. That's what I want, because I'm lazy and I don't want to like do an elevation height map and all that stuff. I just want it to work because it's so close to being perfect. All right, so new scene. Greebles. Greeble. Let's do a sphere because spheres are cool with greebles. Turn that up. We'll turn on display garage shading. Does anyone know how to say that? Like, is it Garard? Gorod? I don't know. Someone phonetically type that in chat, please. We've got this sphere. We're going to say 64 just because that's pretty nice and clean. We're going to make sure we're set to Redshift. Redshift, GI, brute force. And I'm just scroll wheeling to flip through these really quick. And we're going to leave that how that is for now. We're going to say, we're going to make a cycle real quick. So we'll take a plane, pull that down, hit T, scale it up. Hit C to make it editable. Go to the line mode. And this used to work. We used to be able to double click and it would only do a line. So I think I have something. I don't want it to choose. I think there's something I've selected that makes it select the whole loop instead of just the straight line. But we can hit spacebar to pull up our little selection thing, and we'll just, oops, just select that, and then we'll hold Control and deselect that. Okay, so we're gonna grab this corner and we're gonna hold Control, and we're gonna click and drag, click and drag, click and drag, and then we're gonna go up, click and drag, click, 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 and trying to make these about the same distance and speed. And we're gonna make this a little better. There we go. And we hold Alt, hit subdivide. And now we have an instant cyc. Okay, cool. Got a side background, we can scale up. There we go. In case you didn't know how to do that, that's how you make a cyc real quick. UL, is that for the loop? I might have triggered that. Okay, so we'll do Redshift material, throw that on there, double click that. We're just gonna go take that all the way down, the roughness down. We're just gonna make it a matte white. Okay. Redshift material. This is gonna go on our sphere, and we're gonna default this to iron because that's cool. Okay. Pop that on there. Redshift light, area light. We're gonna build a studio setup real quick. So we're gonna rotate this, hold shift to rotate it 9 degrees. Make a big overhead light. That's kind of how all studios are. There we go. We can go way higher actually, since our cyc is ginormous. That'll be good. And we'll hold Control and click and drag that around. And we'll slide this over here, rotate this, crunch this in. We're gonna squish that back down. Yep. And we're gonna hit W to move it, and we're gonna go right over here, holding Control again to move it. And we're gonna take all these lights, and they're all gonna be way too intense right now, so we're gonna set them to 10, because by default they're crazy intense. Okay, we're gonna move this one in. This one I think I accidentally copied 2 of. Okay, here we go. We're gonna take a look at what this looks like. Yep, so we've got this nice studio light set up. Everything's really nice and soft. It's looking good. I'm gonna take one of these side lights, this left one, and I'm going to give it just a tiniest bit of an orange tint and crank it back up to 20. There we go. And I'm gonna take this other side light, which is, what is this light? Oh, I don't need that light. I'm gonna raise this up, bring this over. There we go. So that's a little backlight for it. This light we're gonna make it just a little bit blue. This isn't really displacement. I know it's just kind of boring, but okay. Just setting up our scene real quick. Thanks for bearing in mind. This is all the stuff I cut out in my tutorials. But here we go. We've got a nice fancy orb here. Actually, let's go ahead. Control C and V. We'll duplicate that, and we're gonna pretend that this is like our big studio light. So we're gonna pull it up here, make it real big. We're just gonna light our cyc up with that. There we go. Okay. So that's gonna light up our cyc nice and smooth and make it have an infinite background look. Yeah, cool. Okay, now the focus is this and displacement. So displacement, here we go. Oh, in motion, dude. Can you save the stream? A fun displacement technique you did a few minutes ago with the water, really helpful. Yes, yeah. The stream will be live, or it'll be on YouTube. The recording will be able to watch it for sure. Thanks. Here's the coolest thing. If you guys don't have this, you need to download it. It's called JS Displacement. It's totally free, and it is a Greeble maker, and you can just click, and you have all these crazy settings, and it instantly makes just randomly generated Greebles, and it has different styles. You can do, boom. You can do like cool, motherboard looking things. You can choose the crap pack, which is really cool looking. Let's use the crap pack. They've got big data, other things too, and you can adjust the brightness, the iterations, the sprite scaling, what you want in it. These are all, no problem. These are all very cool things. And you can colorize them, save a normal map of them, all this stuff. But I like to just save a height map. So we're going to save this, and we're going to call this displace 1, okay? And you need to type in .png or .jpeg or something. Sometimes it freaks out if you don't specify how you want to save it. But so now we have that. We're going to open up this material. We're going to go to a texture node. Boom. Texture. We're going to choose our path, and we are going to go to where that was, which I don't have a good memory. Displace. Okay, and that's loaded in, and they're for like 4K. They're insane. Plug that in to the diffuse, and we'll take a look at what that looks like real quick. And it's going to take a second to think because it is such a high res texture. Play on that, and nothing's going to happen because I'm a dummy, and it's set to iron, and iron doesn't use diffuse. We're just going to plug in the surface. So here you go. You can see how that's going to be applied to our sphere, and these are seamless. So if we go in here and we scale this way down, we say like 0.1, 0.1, it's going to actually make it bigger because it's the opposite of UV map. We say 10 and 10, it's going to make tile 10 times across our sphere. And this is probably going to break it. Should have just done 2. I'm going to be mad if this breaks the stream. Okay, we're just gonna go 2 and 2. We're gonna save this real quick. Stream, okay. Okay, there we go. So tile seamlessly. I like the way that looks, so I might leave it at that. I'm going back to 2 and 2. Okay, 2 and 2. We're good. Plug this in. Once again, we need displacement. Plug that in. Texture, boom, boom. Output displacement. Easy peasy. Take our sphere, right click. Redshift tag. Objects. We can close that. We're going to go in here. Check override. Check tessellation. Check displacement. We're going to say 50. And we're going to say 20. Boom. If you zoom in here, you're going to see that we have all this geometry actually lifting off. It's not a bump map. It's actually lifting off off of our sphere. And we can go in here and we can say like 256. Really make it high res and up this to like 8 if we want to. We can start shooting these out even further. Boom. 50. So if we had like a really big object, you could make like a city. So that's pretty cool, like a little Cybertron instantly made. Boom. Any reason I would use a height map instead of a normal map? No, honestly for me, I like height maps more than normal maps because I can like visually look at them and I know that white is going to be up and black is not. And so it's like when I look at a normal map and it's all purple and green, I'm like, I don't really understand what this is doing. So, but you can use a normal map. I just like height maps because it's easier for me to like visualize what's going to happen before I get on there. So we can go all the way around this. And so that's just an easy way to have this really cool Greeble city on your sphere. And obviously, you know, if you do a lower lower res, a lower detail, you're going to get cleaner edges and stuff like that. So now we have this really cool robot droid looking thing, and we haven't modeled anything. So we just have this. Yeah. So what we can do again is we can say -1, and that'll invert it in. So that now we have everything that was popping out is now getting cut into the sphere, which can have some cool effects. So we can always play around with that. You never know. It's going to look totally different. But here's a cool thing I like to do, like I was showing with the waves, but this actually looks cool inside of here. I like to use a curvature map, which if you look at this, what that does is it selects the edges of the geometry. And you can mess with that, bring that down. And samples, I would recommend typing these in. Let's pause this, because when you go to click the slider, you're like, okay, it's like 30,000, like that. And I'm just like, wow. What's the top of this? I don't even want to go up that far because I just misclicked and broke my computer, you know? I don't know why. Why do I have 65,000 is the top of this? What is this this is silly. It should go up to like, I don't know, 5,000. We're going to say like 256. And all that's going to do is that's going to clean up these edges. Basically, if you go lower samples, like let's say like 1, it's going to really soften them up, and it's kind of going to be like feathering our edges. So if you look at that, see how feathery and noisy the edges are. And if we go 512, it's just going to clean those up and make those really tight. So curvature map into a ramp. And the reason I do that is just because I like to clamp down the values, just to kind of clean it up, and it makes the black easier. So I clamp that down. So anything that's not an edge is not going to be an edge. So there we go. Clamp that up. Just like that. Yep. Cool. Nice, clean, clearly black, clearly white. So now actually what I want to do is, instead of saying white, I want this to be like a cyan color. And we're going to take that, plug this into the overall emission color. Plug this material back to the surface. Go to our overall. Go to the emission weight. Type in 10. Boom. Instant Tron. Ha, how about that? I love Tron. So if we take our little thing here, our background, and we change it to like black, like a dark gray, maybe add a little reflection back in it. And then we go slide this window over, hit this little gear, bring up the bloom feature here, check that, slide down this threshold, and boom, there we go. Instantly have a nice glowy cyberpunk Greeble, like Tron City. You can make a whole city out of this. You could do it on a plane, make a whole city, make a cube, whatever you want to do, a disk. And all we have to do, let's say we add this plane to our scene. Stretch that out, hide the sphere. We can grab this, hold control, drag it up to that plane, hold this, hold control, drag it up to there, and then we hit render. And we'll see, we will have to update the geometry on this plane a bit. Let's say 100 by 100. But you instantly have this pretty cool Greeble circuit board. It kind of looks like an Alienware computer. It does look like my headphones. It does. So we could say like 500 and 500 and keep this pretty simple and clean. 8, yep. So there we go. Instantly have a pretty cool Greeble city. And we can really jack this up. We can say like 150. It's going to really shoot those up. Boom. So there you go. I mean, That's awesome. I couldn't model that. It would take me forever to model that. But now just using JS displacement and that, boom, instant Greeble. Very cool. We can turn off some of these lights in the top there. Yeah. And then the cool thing is with an emission, it actually does work with the GI. So the global illumination will actually work with this. Very cool. Didn't have to model a thing. We just took a plane and we even just plopped it on a new material. I mean, you can't beat that. That's just awesome. So we could even do text. We'll do a text real quick, and then I'll take some questions. If I can remember where the heck motext is. They keep moving stuff on me. Motext. Let's hide this plane. We're going to say Tron. Make a nice big font. Hold control and drag it up there. Drag it up there. One thing you need to do, see, we don't have any geometry on the front of this at all. So with mocap stuff, you're going to need to choose subdivided for sure. And then inside the caps, you're going to need to change it off of Ingon and swap it to regular grid. And that's going to add this geometry on the front, in case you did not know that. And so now we can go into uniform. Actually, it's probably going to be our best bet. And just up the number. And we're not going to get a whole lot going on there. There we go. Slide the scale size down here. So now I can go back into this and change that back. Yeah, that's better. Okay, so now hit render on this. Woof, we got a crazy amount of displacement there. Let's turn this back down to 15. There we go. And back down to 10. And so the reason this is backwards is because I hit H. Yeah. H will flip things horizontally just so you can look at stuff from a different angle. And I accidentally hit H. Yeah. Pretty cool. You can see how it's glowing off the floor and everything. It's actually lighting up our scene. Our bloom is super intense. So if it's not high poly enough, you can just go into the caps, bring the grid size down even more. Maybe do a couple more subdivides. I think changing the grid size will be enough. Yeah, I mean, very cool instant Greeble. So displacement has all kinds of freaking uses. You can do noises, you can do whatever, and it's just, I like Redshift's displacement better than Maxon's just because it goes faster and it keeps your scene going really, really smooth. Even though S22, I will say S22 impressed me with how well it handled that high poly plane. Yep. And if you want to change the way it's applied, just change the scale of your texture here. And remember, with texture maps, if you want it to be bigger, you go smaller. And with noise maps, if you want it to be bigger, you go bigger. So very cool. You can add some streaks to this. Up the streak trail. Change the angle, number is just down to 1. There we go. So now we have this cool like lens flare kind of look. What a nice greeble material. Cool. We didn't have to model a thing. Alrighty. Any questions with how to put redshift displacement on an object or anything? Or I mean, that's awesome. You can still animate it. You can move it and stuff just like a texture. Offset it. We could animate the scale of it if we wanted to. So the city would just build on. If we go back to the beginning, it'll be that, and then we scoot in. So you can do some really cool. I mean, look how awesome that looks. I don't know. That's cool to me. Oh, another cool thing. That's a good idea I just had. So instead of this curvature map, one thing you can do is actually I'll just show this. I mean, that's neat. Thanks, man. What's the link to the generator? It is, let me see if it's got a link here. If you look up JS placement, it's by Windmill. Here we go. This is it. windmillart.net. And somewhere on here you can find it. Yep. There it is. It's totally free. It's awesome. I mean, they have like wires and all kinds of things you can make. Trippy. Well, I mean, you name it. Look how clean that looks. I mean, I didn't model a thing. That looks pretty good. So one thing I was going to show real quick is just, this isn't displacement related, but I love it in Redshift. So here's our cube. Oh, I got rid of my plane. Yeah. Okay. Here's our cube. So if we have a Redshift material, and we throw that on here, just a basic one, and we render this out, you'll notice that it's very 3D looking because it has these perfectly flat edges. Okay, and I did another tutorial on this. I just want to show it real quick, just in case you didn't see my round corners tutorial. That's what this is going to be. Inside of Redshift, there's a thing called round corners, and it works as a bump map. So you have to plug it into the bump. Plug that in, texture, boom, into the overall bump. And what it does is it fakes the edges. So if we plug this straight into the surface so we can see what it's doing, we can increase the radius of it, increase the samples. I'm just going to clean that up. So you can see it's finding where the geometry is edging out. Let me pull my stream back up. I accidentally hid the chat. Dave Silver. Oh, I didn't even notice. Hey, man. That's why you texted me. I was like, I figured you must be watching, but I was like, maybe that's just a random text and you're going to follow it up or something. But the generator is very cool. But basically, what you can do now is plug this into the surface. And with round corners, it's going to fake. Maybe I don't need to plug it into a bump map. Maybe I can plug it straight in. Yes. Okay. Sorry. Don't plug it into a bump map. You can plug it straight in. And it will fake a fillet. So you don't actually have to add any geometry to get those nice highlights on an edge, which is very helpful for complex models that you download off the internet that you couldn't possibly bevel at all. So if you get like a crazy model and you try to bevel it and you're just never going to get these sharp edges, you can actually fake it with this and get some nice highlights and keep your geometry super low. So when you add like something like, you know, add this into a cloner and have 201, 201, 201, do render instances. You have like 10, 10, and 10. Do a quick random effector. Right. So now you have a whole lot of squares everywhere. H will frame everything out. And so now we don't have a lot of, our geometry is super basic because it's just a simple cube. It has no fillet or anything. But when we render this, you'll notice that all the cubes have very nice little highlights on them because they all have the round corner applied to them. So you can still get that nice soft edge on all of these without actually having it in there. There we go. that's it. There's first live stream. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Let me know in the comments below or whatever, or message me on Instagram or anything if you guys liked it. I'll try to do more. I'll try to get a consistent schedule with them if you guys like them. I like doing them more than recording tutorials. As far as my tutorials go, I like to keep sort of more of a long form thing going, and I have some classes on Skillshare, and I actually am going to show you guys a sneak peek at the next Skillshare class. This is what I'm going to teach. And we're going to set this to loop. So I'm going to teach how to make this looping retro wave style background on Skillshare. This is my next class. So be sure to definitely turn in. Hotkeys to zoom out is number 2. 3 does rotate and 1 is pan. Okay, thank you. Yep, so I'll show how to make this reflective road, how to make the digital mountains, city, this sun back there, the car, and how to make it loop so that you can't ever tell when it's cutting. This is actually only 3 seconds long, but it's just going. C4D Basecamp, nice. I love School of Motion. School of Motion is fantastic. I love those guys. Okay, there we go. Pretty cool. Thanks for watching. Yes, and that's, I mean, honestly, making that road on the floor, that's just Maxon noise again. It's just kind of layered together in the right way. Redshift is so good at reflections and stuff. Okay, cool. All right, Skillshare classes for sure. If you guys don't know, I have a couple. Let me bring them up. Do a little self promo. I need to work on my website so that actually you can just send people there. I have this.
Hey, how's it going?
Hey nerd. Introduction to Redshift, where we go over all the basics of Redshift. We make this scene here. But basically, we learn how to use what's the most common lights to use and everything, how to set depth of field with your camera, what actually are good render settings and things like that. And then my other class, the newest one is, let me swap off just so I don't show anything I'm not supposed to. This class. Learn 50 plus metal materials with Redshift. So learn to create them. Seriously, I make over 50 materials and we just do a deep dive. Students I've had really enjoy this class. We just go deep dive into making materials, and you can see this is a student. This is his final material. It looks crazy, but by the end of this class, it makes sense, and that's how it looks. I mean, that's really cool, and so it's really neat. This is all the materials we make. I mean, we really just make a ton, and we go through and we cover a ton of stuff in way more detail than we did today. And it's 5+ hours, but if you want to learn how to use the Redshift Shader node and some good workflow tips, definitely check that out. I will post a link. If you don't have Skillshare, you can use the link that I'll post and sign up for 2 months for free, which is plenty of time to take this class. But I will be putting more out soon, so I'd really appreciate it if you sign up. There's a ton of good stuff on Skillshare for sure. It's got everything, but there you go. Thanks for watching, everybody. I need to go back to the YouTube chat. Reflections look dope. Peace. Thanks, guys. Now, how do I end the stream? There we go. See y'all.